Happy 4th of July, Jacksonites. This is not me coming back to YouTube like fully. This is just something that I really want to do. So call it like a precursor to my return to YouTube. But yes, happy 4th of July, everybody. And there's no beating around the bush. Today, even though I really wanted to do this last year, but duty called at work, on the 40s, well, not really the 46th anniversary, at least, hang on. What was the actual release date? Oh, kind of close, but not really. Well, yeah, kind of close. To celebrate the 46th anniversary of this movie, today, on the 4th of July, I will be reviewing 1975's Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg. If any of my audience might remember that this was one of the earliest franchises that I actually reviewed in my really early days of YouTube. Admittedly, very much so inspired by Jackie Boy, because he had just done his review of the Jaws franchise at the time. So I felt inspired to do that. Now I would just film videos on my phone and upload them to YouTube, 5 or 6 videos a day. They're like 10 to 15 minutes long. Oh, those were dark days. But those videos have long since been deleted. And at that time, I kind of really was just going along with the crowd and giving just my opinion based on everybody else's opinion. So, and of course, I've since very much so changed since then. So I will be I'll be re-reviewing this franchise. And funny enough, I actually wanted to originally do all 4 movies in one video. And then I wanted to do the first 2 movies in one video. But then I just decided, you know what? I may as well do this one on a movie by movie case. And I also was originally supposed to have a guest in the form of Shawnee Boy, because this is one of his favorite films. Mine too, but I guess he just couldn't make it. So it's just going to be me. So, yes, indeed. Jaws, directed by good old Steven Spielberg. As I've stated before, Steven Spielberg, in my opinion, is tied with James Cameron as potentially my number 1 favorite director of all time. As me and Trev discussed in our Aliens review, James Cameron and Steven Spielberg are definitely like those dreamer directors. Like they want to give you a sheer epic spectacle whenever they do a movie. And with Steven Spielberg, he takes the more fantastical elements and just makes the films more fun. And I would definitely say there's like this stigma in Hollywood that a whole lot of, which it is true for the most part, there's this stigma in Hollywood that the easiest way to get into Hollywood, or at least get into the movie business, is to do a horror movie. And there's been lots and lots of actors and directors who started off their career with horror movies. Oliver Stone, Robert Weiss, Ridley Scott, Peter Jackson, Francis Ford Coppola, Sam Raimi. Those are all directors that started off their careers in horror. And then there's actors like Steve McQueen, Christopher Lee, Kevin Bacon, Matthew McConaughey, Renee Zellweger, Jennifer Aniston. All of these big directors and actors start off their career doing horror movies. And I would definitely label Jaws as a horror movie. I do, though, more label it just as a monster movie, but it definitely is a horror movie. And of course, this wasn't Steven Spielberg's first movie. I believe that was the TV movie Duel, which this movie is considered to be a spiritual successor to. But this was Steven Spielberg's breakout movie that launched his career and launched the summer blockbuster type film. This movie being labeled as a prototypical summer blockbuster, regarded as a watershed moment in motion picture history. Hang on. What's the definition of a summer blockbuster? Hang on. What is Oh, basically a summer blockbuster is a movie that hang on. Off to a stunning start. I guess I'm rusty. That doesn't answer my question. A summer blockbuster pretty much is a movie that is just this really big, really action-packed, explosive movie that just has the feel of feeling like a summer type film. Whereas winter and fall are more reserved for the more heavy and scaled down and more Oscar worthy movies. The summer season is just for big dumb fun films. Which I actually prefer my type of movie to be a big dumb fun film. So this movie started that stereotype and to this day is one of the very best. Based on the novel, of course, by Peter Benchley, which I never have read, though I am aware that the movie is actually quite a bit different for the better than the book, because apparently there's lots of elements of the book that were snipped out of this movie that Steven Spielberg saw as being crap. I will mention a couple of the differences that I'm aware of as I go through the plot and the pros and cons. Um, and also another reason why this movie was such a blockbuster is that it at one point was the highest grossing film of all time. Having only a $9 million budget to its name, it went on to gross $472 million in its box office run, which for 1975, even I would say nowadays, because if a movie like Escape Plan, which also had a $9 million budget, can go on to make $125 million, and that's considered a big hit, still 472 million against a 9 million budget, that's a big freaking hit. But especially back in 1975, that was a gargantuan hit. And it was the highest grossing film of all time until 2 years later when Star Wars came around, which also was in the 400s, but I think it was like 480 something. But still. And this, of course, like I said, launched Steven Spielberg's career, and it launched also the killer shark genre, which this movie itself would spawn 3 sequels without any involvement of Spielberg or Benchley, as well as many, 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 many fucking ripoffs, parodies, homages, and just straight up copies of this movie. Like, holy shit. Um, I don't think, aside from Star Wars and maybe Godzilla too, I don't think there's a movie on this planet that has so many ripoffs. That is Jaws. You have Tentacles, Orca the Killer Whale, even though it's not really a Jaws ripoff, but it's a killer sea animal movie done in the style of Jaws. Um, Razorback, Rattlers, um, the Mako, Jaws of Death. Um, I'm sure the Sharknado movies took some influence from Jaws. There's just been The Last Shark, which is pretty much an Italian remake. There's been so many movies over the years that have just been blatantly ripping off Jaws. It's not even funny. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So I don't know. There are some decent Jaws ripoffs out there, so it's not totally bad, but it just is, very blatantly obvious that a lot of people over the years have wanted to cash in on that success. Um, Not that the movie didn't deserve any of this. Jaws is absolutely one of my favorite films of all time. I have quite a bit of nostalgia for this movie, although ironically, I haven't seen it that many times. But yeah, I would definitely say Jaws is one of my absolute favorite films. And definitely one of my favorite Steven Spielberg movies. Not my absolute favorite. I probably would say that's Jurassic Park. But Jaws is definitely up there. And by the way, wouldn't it be cool if Steven Spielberg himself was to come out and say, yeah, Jaws and Jurassic Park are in the same universe? Uh, Lake Placid, yes. Tremors, no, I don't think so. Um, so my personal history when it comes to Jaws, there's not a whole lot to say other than ironically the first one of the franchise I knew of Jaws as a young age. Who didn't? This is just one of those movies that everybody knows. Like King Kong or Freddy Krueger or Santa Claus. Everybody knows what Jaws is. It's one of the greatest movies of all time, and it's the quote unquote greatest killer shark movie of all time. Foreshadowing. Um, yeah, everybody knows Jaws, but I didn't see Jaws until I was about 14, no, 12 or 13. I saw Jaws 2 for the first time, or beforehand. Jaws 2 was the first of the series I ever saw. I saw that at my Aunt Kim's house, but I'll talk about that when I review Jaws 2. Um, but afterwards, I remember because it was, um, fuck. Steven, you're distracting me. Stop. Um, oh yeah. So the first time I ever watched Jaws from beginning to end, my mom at the time was having a garage sale, and I distinctly remember this because she was allowing me to watch the movie in her bedroom because you know that stigma. Kids are supposed to stay out of their parents' rooms, which was the same for me, of course. Um, but yeah, my mom was allowing me to watch a movie in her bedroom, partially because she wanted to keep me kind of in sight because right below her bedroom window was the garage. So that's when she was having that's where she was having her garage sale. So, well, duh, of course. Um, so if she wanted to call up to her window, I would be right there to hear. And the movie that I wanted to watch was Jaws. So, because I saw that my stepdad had just recently purchased it. So I sat down and I decided to watch Jaws. And I was very impressed. I was very entertained. I was just yeah, I had my mind blown. I thought this was one of the best movies I'd ever seen at the time, and since then, of course, it's been a favorite of mine. I do consider Jaws to be one of my favorite movies. I have a question though that I will be posing at the end of this video. That's probably going to piss off a lot of people, but I don't really care. So, with all that being said, let us jump into the plot of Jaws, shall we? In the beach town of Amity Island, a young woman named Chrissy Watkins goes skinny dipping in the ocean. While treading water, she is unknowingly attacked by an unseen force. Oh, wait, a word from our sponsor. The next day, her partial remains are found on shore, and the medical examiner's conclusion is that the death was due to a shark attack, leads Police Chief Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider, to close the beaches. Mayor Larry Vaughn, played by Murray Hamilton, this fucking douchebag, persuades him to reverse his decision, fearing that the town's summer economy will be ruined. The coroner tentatively concurs with the mayor's theory that Chrissy was killed in a boating accident, and Brody reluctantly accepts their conclusion until the shark kills a young boy, Alex Kintner, in full view of a crowded beach. A bounty is placed on the shark by the boy's mother, causing an amateur shark hunting frenzy, and local professional shark fisherman named Quint, played by Robert Shaw, offers to catch and kill it for $10,000. Meanwhile, consulting oceanographer Matt Hooper, played by the awesome Richard Dreyfuss, examines Christie's remains and confirms that indeed her death was caused by a shark, an unusually large one. When local fishermen catch a tiger shark, the mayor proclaims that the beach is safe. Mrs. Kintner, Alex's mother, confronts Brody and blames him for her son's death, like a bitch. Hooper expresses doubts that the tiger shark is responsible for the attacks, and his suspicions are confirmed when, after an examination, no human remains are found inside its stomach. Only a couple of fish, a beer can, and a license plate. Because, tiger sharks are like garbage cans. Hooper and Brody find a half-sunken vessel while searching the night waters in Hooper's boat. Underwater, Hooper removes a sizable great white shark's tooth, being about that big, from the boat's hull, but drops it in fright after discovering the partial corpse of local fisherman Ben Gardner. Vaughn dismisses Brody and Hooper's assertions that a huge great white shark is responsible for the deaths, but still refuses to close the beaches, allowing only increased safety precautions. On the 4th of July weekend, tourists pack the beaches. Following a juvenile prank with the fake shark fin, the real shark enters a nearby lagoon, killing a boater and causing Brody's oldest son, Michael, to go into shock. Brody then convinces a guilt-ridden Vaughn to hire Quint to kill the shark. Quint, Brody, and Hooper set out on Quint's boat, the Orca, to hunt the shark. While Brody lays down a chum line, being chopped up fish guts, fish meat, fish blood, and fish oil, which stinks like shit, Quint waits for an opportunity to hook the shark. Without warning, it appears behind the boat. Quint, estimating its length at 25 feet, 7.6 meters, 25, 3 tons of them, harpoons it with a line attached to a flotation barrel, but the shark pulls the barrel underwater and disappears. At nightfall, Quint and Hooper drunkenly exchange stories about their assorted scars, and Quint reveals in a very bone-chilling scene that he survived the attack on the USS Indianapolis. The shark returns unexpectedly, ramming the boat's hull and disabling the power. The men work through the night, repairing the engine. In the morning, Brody attempts to call the Coast Guard, but Quint, who has become obsessed with killing the shark without outside assistance, kind of like Captain Ahab, smashes the radio. After a long chase, Quint harpoons the shark with another barrel. The line is tied to the ship's stern cleats, but the shark drags the boat backwards, swamping the deck and flooding the engine compartment. Quint prepares to sever the line to prevent the transom from being pulled out, but the cleats break off, keeping the barrels attached to the shark. Quint heads towards shore to draw the shark into shallower waters, but overtaxes the damaged engine and it blows up. As the Orca slowly sinks, the trio attempts a riskier approach. Hooper enters the water in a shark-proof cage, intending to lethally inject the shark with strychnine, pretty much rat poison, using a hypodermic spear. The shark attacks the cage, causing Hooper to drop the spear, which sinks and is lost. While the shark thrashes in the tangled remains of the cage, Hooper manages to escape to the seabed. The shark breaks free and leaps onto the boat in the climactic scene, devouring Quint in the process. Trapped on the sinking vessel, Brody shoves a pressurized scuba tank into the shark's mouth and climbs into the crow's nest. And using Quint's rifle, he shoots the tank, which explodes and obliterates the shark. Would not actually happen, but we'll talk about that later. Hooper surfaces, and he and Brody paddle back to Amity Island, clinging to the remaining barrels, thus ending the movie on a pretty good note, and leading into the giant subgenre of movies that this movie spawned. That's an interesting cast. If I made a Jaws remake, Robert Downey Jr. as Brody, Bradley Cooper as Matt Hooper, and Harrison Ford as Quint. That's an interesting cast. I'll have to think about that more. So, what do I think of this plot? It's great. It's the prototypical and at the same time, though, not exactly the Citizen Kane of Killer Shark movies. I don't really think one such exists. Like, I don't really attach the Citizen Kane name to movies that I respect, but I don't really love. Well, I do love this movie, and I don't really want to quite give it the Citizen Kane of Killer Shark movies, but I guess you technically could, because kind of similar to Night of the Living Dead, this movie lays the groundworks for the format of not just killer shark movies, but just the killer animal type of film, which you could say that this movie technically was also part of the nature attacks fad that was big in the mid to late 70s, where animals would go on killing sprees. Like, this is a shark rip, or this is a Jaws ripoff too, but Grizzly, the original Grizzly, is a killer animal movie. Frogs, Night of the Lepus, Kingdom of the Spiders, Jaws. There's a whole bunch of these like killer animal movies that were all the rage in the 70s at the time. And I don't really think this one was the first, because I think Night of the Lepus came out in 72. But this takes all of those, what would be seen as cliches, being the killer animal movie. It's almost a little bit like a prototypical slasher movie as well. So a little bit of like Psycho kind of, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like these killer horror elements. But it takes all of these elements, and it adds a good cast, a great soundtrack, a talented director that knows how to shoot a movie, and it takes all these elements, turns it into something that feels fresh and new, and creates an entirely different format for the world to use and study and enjoy. So yeah, this movie's plot is very, very good. It's well told, it's well acted, it's well written, and it's extremely entertaining, which is something that I've always liked about Jaws. I'm not the first person to say this. I certainly won't be the last. Jaws definitely is one of those movies that just puts you in the summer mood. I do like Orca the Killer Whale. I think that's a very underrated film. But yeah, Jaws just, it has the look, the atmosphere, the feel, and the appeal of just a summer movie, partially because it takes place on the 4th of July. It takes place in the summer. They talk about the summer all the time. And there's a lot of fishing in this movie, which generally fishing is a summer activity. My father being, of course, a big fan of fishing. My grandfather also is a big fan of fishing. I am not a fan of fishing. I think it's boring as shit. But because it also deals with the 4th of July, it brings to mind barbecues, bonfires, going to the beach, all summer activities, which, who doesn't like going to the beach? So yeah, I definitely do agree that this movie just has that summer feel, and that is one of the many elements that just makes this movie so enjoyable. It's just fun to watch and relive your experiences of going to the beach or doing summer activities. It's just a fun feeling movie. Like it's a feel good movie, as Jackie Boy once coined to me. So with all that being said, let's get on to the pros and cons of Jaws. I have 9 pros. Pro number 1 is the cast. Mainly going to be talking about the main 3 characters, Matt Hooper, Chief Brody, and Quint. Starting off with Chief Brody, played by Roy Scheider. This is probably the greatest performance of Roy Scheider's career. I haven't seen many other movies that he was in. There was, I can't remember. What I can't remember. There was like a car chase movie that he was in that was kind of done in the style of Bullet. I can't quite remember what that movie was, but he was good there. Do you also like Piranha? No, not really. I actually like the remake, Piranha 3D, more. So take that for what you will. Yeah, there was a car chase movie that Roy Scheider was in. There was another movie, I can't quite remember what it was called, but he was Dustin Hoffman's brother, and he was like either a police officer or a CIA agent that he was kind of good in, but he was also really underutilized. And then, of course, he was in Jaws too, which he's good there as well. But I definitely say that Roy Scheider is at his best in this movie. You can tell a lot about Chief Brody just through dialogue, but also just how he acts when he's on this island. You can tell that Chief Brody, because they state that he's from New York, he's been on Amity Island for maybe 3, 4, or 5 months. He's very much so kind of not really this word because I don't like to use it, but like an outsider. He's just very new to this very new type of environment. It's also a little bit like a culture shock situation because he's used to the high crime ridden, high the high crime, high octane, high action of New York. And then you go from there, and then you just go to Amity Island, which is barely anything at all. The worst thing that happens around there is when some drunk kids run around either cow tipping or smashing some mailboxes. That's about it. Yeah, this is obviously a very new environment for Chief Brody, and he's kind of struggling to adjust to new life on Amity Island, but he still has good spirits, and he does his best to accept his responsibility as a sheriff. And then he finally does kind of grow some balls when he not only grows some balls, but like he finally decides to be more assertive after his son is attacked by the shark. He kind of takes the mayor by his ear, shoves him to a room, and says, "You're going to sign this contract and you're going to fucking hire this man to kill this shark. My son was attacked, and we've already had another person attacked because of your stupidity. Sign this fucking paper right now." And the mayor does, of course, and he decides to tag along. And once again, he's obviously out of his element on the boat because they also state that he's afraid of the water. And you can tell he's also kind of struggling to be on this boat. He can't stand the stink of the chum. He's got fucking a patch of sunblock on his nose. He's got a life jacket on that's so bunched up around his neck. It's not even funny. You can just tell, no pun intended, he's kind of a fish out of water almost the entire movie. But he's doing his best to adapt to his circumstances, and he has good spirits, and he tries his best to get along with his peers. Specifically, Matt Hooper, whom we'll talk about next, played by Richard Dreyfuss, one of, in my opinion, a very underrated actor. Richard Dreyfuss in this movie, this isn't quite my favorite performance of Richard Dreyfuss. That would still be Stakeout. Hilarious movie. But Richard Dreyfuss is very good in this movie. Matt Hooper, he is a really good counterpoint to. Well, I'll talk about that more when I talk about Quint. I'll just say he's a good counterpoint to Quint. He's very likable. He's kind of funny. Like his first one of his first scenes, Brody asks him, "Hey, can you make sure all these guys don't swamp the boat over here?" "Hey, gentlemen, the officers asked me to tell you that you guys are going to swamp that boat." They're like, "Ah, shut up, college boy, get out of here." He just starts cracking up, turns around, he's like, "They're all going to die." um, let's see. And his argument with Mayor Vaughn after they discover Ben Gardner's boat, "Mr. Vaughn, what we're dealing with here is an eating machine. All this machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks. And that's all. Now, I want you to pay close attention to this sign. This is very accurate on every account that there is. Would love to prove that, wouldn't you? Get your name posted in the National Geographic." Oh, man. And he's just so flabbergasted at how stupid Mayor Vaughn is in this situation. He never really like loses his shit throughout the movie, but when things get kind of exasperated, well, no, he does lose his shit in a couple of scenes. Though it's later in the movie when he kind of clashes with Quint on overtaxing the ship, and also he kind of snaps at Brody when they say, "Hey, let's use the tank. That shark will rip that cage to pieces. You got any better suggestions?" But still, he remains in good spirits, and he has really good chemistry with Roy Scheider. When in the scene where they go cut open the shark, and they're talking about, because earlier in the movie, Chief Brody had been researching sharks, like he was looking at shark attacks, studying shark anatomy and how sharks hunt and feed and just live their lives. There's a scene where, "Hey, is it true that sharks can attack in only 3 feet of water, about 10 feet from the beach?" "That's right." And isn't it there this theory of a shark will lay claim to an area and just keep feeding it? It's called territoriality. It's just a theory I happen to agree with. He didn't eat a car, did he? No. Tiger shark's like a garbage can. He'll eat anything. And also, it's really nice to see because you can when Brody is interacting with the mayor and the mayor is like really trying to shove down his throat, like, "Hey, we really don't want to report this as a shark attack because we need the summer dollars." And like Brody at first he's like, "I don't know, man, but all right, we'll see." But once an expert, being Brody, comes in and blatantly makes it clear, yes, I do. I like to include Jaws to be a part of the Universal Monster Cycle. Kind of a bit of an unconventional inclusion, but this is a Universal movie, and the shark in Jaws is certainly a monster. So there you go. But anyway, when you see the expert, that is Hooper, blatantly make it obvious, no, this was not a boating accident, which is a nice joke in Stakeout. It's you feel like that satisfaction, like, "See, I told you, this ain't no damn boating accident." So you, the audience, feel satisfied along with Hooper and Brody, like, yeah, the mayor's full of shit. And just over, I think Matt Hooper might be my favorite character in this film. Thankfully, he's very different from his book counterpart, because in the book, Matt Hooper showed up half to check out the shark, but also half to fuck Mayor or Chief Brody's wife. Now I don't know if I don't know if Brody ever found out about his wife and Hooper's affair in the book. At least I hope they do. But they cut that out in this movie. I think that was for the better because I feel like that was extremely, extremely unnecessary, and it makes Hooper to be kind of an unlikable douche. So thankfully, in this movie, they cut that out, and I think Hooper is a very likable guy. This will lead us to the third character. Not really going to say much about Lorraine Gary as Ellen Brody, other than, she does good acting. She's got good writing. She's got a couple decent key scenes. I do think she's better in 2 and 4, but here she's not bad. She has good chemistry with Roy Scheider. Oh, this chair is uncomfortable. But yeah, we're going to now talk about Quint, played by Robert Shaw. For a long time, I always kind of had mixed feelings about Quint, and in a way, I still sort of do. But now I do see Quint as just being a very, very good character. He's kind of a screwball. And, well, the thing with him is he's kind of a fun screwball. Like when he gets all hopped up and into the chase of getting the shark, he's kind of nutty and he's like really, really excited and really into it. He's kind of fun to watch. He's got this really almost obnoxious laugh that he has when he's getting really, really excited. And also when he's really cracked up about something, like when he pulls out his fake tooth, oftentimes he does like this wheezy screech, like sound, which is kind of annoying at first, but then you realize that's just kind of part of his personality. So you just kind of find it endearing. Oh, fuck. Obviously, I'm not using my rocking chair for this review, too. I'd moved that into my bedroom, so I'm going to have to get another chair, but this one sucks. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, so Quint. So I still do kind of have mixed feelings about Quint because on the one hand, he is a fun guy to watch. And there's moments where you do feel like his head is in the game and he does realize this is kind of a serious situation. But then there's the other half where towards the end of the movie, he starts going a little nuts, too nuts, and also kind of stupid. He's suffering from Captain Ahab syndrome. He's becoming so obsessed with killing the shark that he's letting that go to his head and making him blinded by pride. So you just kind of you share in Martin and Brody's or in Martin and Hooper's frustration with Quint because you just kind of want to grab him by his ear and slap the shit out of him and say, "Get a hold of yourself." But he still is a likable enough guy to when his death comes around, you kind of feel bad. You're just like, "Oh man, not Quint." So Quint is a great character. I also do think his best scene in the entire movie is him telling his story of how he survived the attack on the USS Indianapolis, telling of how he was on the ship, it got torpedoed, and he survived. I think it was like 10 days in floating in the ocean with 1,100 men being picked off one by one by sharks. It's also kind of a funny story because apparently behind the scenes, Robert Shaw drank a lot on set. And there was one scene that they did before that scene that was just completely unusable because Robert Shaw was just totally plastered. And the next day, he asked for a redo of that because he was embarrassed and he felt bad. He did that scene in one take without any rehearsal whatsoever. So you definitely can say he made up for his fuck up the previous day. And it's a really creepy and kind of bone-chilling scene, just how the way that Brody paints this big picture using only his words, blinking very little, and just his almost monotone voice. It's a little similar to how Donald Pleasence describes Michael Myers in the original Halloween, which I'm sure that was a bit of an influence there. Uh, so let's see. Yeah, Quint's a great character. There's a couple scenes where you get kind of frustrated with him, but I do feel like that was intentional. Because, like I said, you share in Hooper and Brody's frustrations with him. He's the hunt is starting to get to his brain, it's starting to make him be stupid and reckless and kind of a bit more of an unlikable screwball. But Quint is still a great character. So yeah, the characters in this movie are very solid. My favorite though is definitely Hooper. Pro number two is the cinematography of this movie is absolutely phenomenal. Again, this wasn't Steven Spielberg's first movie, but this just feels overall like Steven Spielberg fully coming into his craft and like showing the world, hey, I've got some talent. And how the way that he shoots this movie is really, really, really solid. It was stated that Steven Spielberg took a lot of influences from Alfred Hitchcock into this movie, both in its story and just how the film is made. And you can definitely tell. A lot of the camera angles are very, very, I wouldn't really say innovative, but it's just very clever. And it's very, I guess, inventive, or like, I don't know what the word is. It's crafty, it's clever, and it's creative. How Spielberg shoots this movie, he doesn't have bland, just shoot straight on um, camera angles. Sometimes he shoots from low to make things look big. Sometimes he shoots like there's one scene where what's his name? Quint is in the crow's nest of the Orca, and there's a downward shot where you see the entire deck of the Orca. Matt is up in the engine playing solitaire, and at the very bottom is Brody chumming the waters. It's just a very innovative and creative shot. There's a pretty famous scene where the first big shark attack when Alex Kittner is eaten, Brody is on the beach, and there's a double exposure shot where some dude is all up talking about some meaningless bullshit to Brody, and then you can tell that like the dude is right here, and then Brody is looking out on the water in the background. But both shots are supposed to be the main focus. So your attention is kind of drawn or is like torn between watching the dude talk bullshit to Chief Brody and keeping an eye out on the swimmers in the ocean so they don't get eaten by a shark. Um, just overall, there's lots of creative use of the camera to make this movie look just more professional than it was. Not to say that this movie looks cheap, but just overall, the camera work in this movie is really, really good. And it's not boring. It's not flat. It's not shot like a boring, almost docudrama like film. It's shot like this movie has personality, and it's shot like this, that Steven Spielberg was really trying to convey that this movie has soul, I guess. Just the cinematography in this movie is very good. It's also very good due to the fact that this movie actually was shot on the ocean, which the studio at first just wanted to do it in a big pool, but Steven Spielberg wanted to stay like kind of close to realism, so they did shoot this movie actually out on the ocean, which was very challenging. This movie did have kind of a troubled production. Mostly it was due to just a lot of technical issues and also the difficulties of shooting it out on the ocean. But you can definitely tell that it was worth it because of how well this movie is shot. Pro number three is the music score by none other than the amazing John Williams. John Williams definitely is also one of my favorite music composers of all time. And John Williams and Steven Spielberg go together like bread and butter. Did he do Jurassic Park as well? I think he did. Let me check here real quick. Da, 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 da. He did. Okay, cool. So yeah, Jurassic Park and Steven Spielberg go together like bread and butter. Um, and I would definitely say John Williams is one of the greatest music composers of all time, up there with the likes of Akira Ifukube, Bear McCreary, Jerry Goldsmith, and Danny Elfman. He's a phenomenal music composer. A lot of the music, not talk about the Jaws theme, we'll get to that in a minute. A lot of the other music in this movie, it's very whimsy and whimsical and fantastical and just it's a very fun musical score, and it absolutely adds to all the action scenes and the chase scenes, and also in the horror scenes. Now we'll talk about the Jaws theme. Everybody knows the Jaws theme. Dun 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 dun. Everybody knows the Jaws theme, and when used in this movie, it is absolutely phenomenal. It's creepy, it's foreboding, it's thrilling, and it sends shivers up your spine. Um, and of course, the music does work very well in heightening the suspense and also adding itself to the scares, which we'll talk about next. Not much to say about the musical score other than it's John Williams. I don't know how early this was into John Williams' career, but I do know that this is, of course, one of John Williams' best tracks in his entire career, along with the Superman theme and the Jurassic Park theme. And I can't think of any others off the top of my head. But yeah, John Williams is a phenomenal music composer, and this movie has a phenomenal music soundtrack. Oh, and he also went on to do Jaws 2 as well. Um, so that's cool. Um, so yeah, the suspense. Now, this was due largely in part, like I said, Steven Spielberg took a lot of influence from Alfred Hitchcock, and of course, Alfred Hitchcock is known as the master of suspense, which is good, and you can clearly tell that Steven Spielberg is kind of wearing his influence on his sleeves, but he still manages to turn it into something of his own. However, the the suspense was kind of done unintentionally at first because of a lot of technical issues with the mechanical shark. So Steven Spielberg decided to compensate for that with the suspense and the use of this is going back to the cinematography, the use of the POV underwater, showing the shark's point of view. And then you throw in the Jaws theme by John Williams. It really heightens the suspense and it builds this picture in your mind. All the POV shots are 100% perfectly executed in giving you the sense of being in the shark's footsteps, of looking around underwater and looking for its next meal. Um, it kind of reminds me of the original Saw. Now that I think about it, because the movie was rushed and it was kind of troubled and it had a bit of a low budget. It was just an example of a director using turning a negative into a positive and using their limited resources to their advantage by just being creative and crafty. Some filmmakers just thrive on limited resources, and I would say Steven Spielberg is one of those examples. Although nowadays he has all the resources that he wants because he just knows how to make a good movie. Um, except for Lincoln, which is boring as fuck. um, so yeah, the suspense in this movie is absolutely phenomenal, and the scares being pro number 5 is the scares. This mostly does have to do with this movie famously. Hello, Zilla Punk. This movie famously made many, 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 many people afraid to go into the ocean after watching this movie. Admittedly, myself included. It has that creep factor and that kind of what, like the fear of the unknown factor, where like you yourself are kind of spooked on, oh, is there a shark that's gonna get me? Even if I take a shower, is the shark gonna get me? Like it gives you that fear of the water, which I'll admit I had that too. Um, Actually, the very first time I saw Jaws 2, my aunt had a pool in the backyard, and I went to go swim in it, and I was a little spooked myself, like, is the shark gonna get me in this swimming pool? But yeah, this movie famously made a lot of people afraid to go into the water. And it's nice to see that that effect still reigns true to this day. Um, but not only that, it has a couple really good jump scares. One of the most famous, of course, um, is the appearance of Ben Gardner's mangled up face. Hooper goes underwater and he sees like a hole in the hull of a ship, and he extracts the shark tooth, and then out of nowhere comes the mangled face of Ben Gardner popping out of nowhere. And it helps that there's like a music sting that sounds like a scream, that just scares the shit out of you. There's a couple shark jump scares too. There's, of course, the famous um, scene when Brody is chumming the waters. Why don't you come out and sling some of this shit? And then out of nowhere, boom, there's the shark. And then you see the look on Brody's face like, you're going to need a bigger boat. And the final jump scare that I want to talk about, which actually got me this recent time around, is when Hooper is underwater in the shark cage. He's looking around and it's really quiet, and the shark had just swum by. So you're thinking, oh, well, he's off in that direction, so let's just look in that direction. Boom! Attacks the back of the cage. What's really crazy too is you do see it right before it hits the cage and right before the music hits. But as soon as it hits the cage, the music starts up. You hear this loud slamming sound. You're just like, oh, fuck. It actually managed to get me this time. Partially because I haven't seen this movie beforehand in like 3 or 4 years. But that scene actually did make me jump out of my seat a little bit. Spooked my son, whom I was holding at the time. Ow, 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 and ow. So, yeah, the scares in this movie are very, very well done. These are some of the greatest jump scares of all time. And this is one of the greatest creep factors that a movie can give you of all time, in my opinion. Makes you afraid to go in the water, makes you afraid of the ocean, and it makes you afraid of the unknown, which is really good. And it's still very effective to this day. Pro number 6 is the special effects in this movie. There's not that much to speak of. Obviously, the shark is mechanical, though they do make use of some stock footage of the shark, of an actual great white, which is fine. It does work, but the blood effects when people are torn to pieces, like all the fake body parts, look convincing. When you see the remains of Chrissy, you don't see that much of her, but you see just enough to paint the picture in your mind of what it actually looks like. And also Matt Hooper describes what's left of her, which also paints a picture in your mind of how gnarly and mangled up the remains of Chrissy are. When the dude in the lagoon gets chomped, you see a dismembered leg fall to the bottom of the ocean, which looks really good. It's ragged and torn and leaking blood. And also when Quint gets eaten by the shark, this movie is rated PG, and there's that much blood in this movie. He's getting bitten on the torso, and blood is spraying everywhere. He's getting thrashed about and torn to pieces, and right before he dies, Quint just spits out this giant glob of blood all over his face, and then he's dragged to the bottom. And then, of course, the effects on when the shark is blown to pieces look fantastic. Like the shark actually looks like it was straight up decapitated by this explosion, and as it sinks to the bottom, it's just gushing geysers of blood as it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. It looks great. The mechanical shark itself sometimes looks good. Usually it's when they're just shooting it from like its fins up, like when they're just focusing on the head, it looks fine. Yes, it looks fake and it looks like a fake shark, but well, that just adds to this movie's charm. But I still say that it shows personality and it shows menace and a sense of threat. And I still like, yeah, it looks fake, but at the same time, it does look good for the most part. I like that even though this wouldn't happen, but I like the sense of continuity where the shark's teeth are always blood stained, and well, Beetlejuice isn't that intense, but Poltergeist is one intense PG-13 or PG rated movie. What was I talking about? Fuck. Oh yeah, I like the sense of continuity where the shark's teeth are always blood-stained and the inside of its mouth always looks like it's slathered in blood, and there's some bits of meat and cloth hanging from its teeth, which I do like. Just makes it look even nastier and meaner. So yeah, I like the mechanical shark. There's one aspect of it that really sticks out like a sore thumb, which I will talk about when I get to when I talk about this movie later. But yeah, the special effects in this movie overall they're pretty good. Slightly dated, especially nowadays, in my opinion. But what we do have that is good is solid. It's not really necessarily a con. It's just knowing that there was a lot of mechanical issues on set, knowing that going into this movie, what we do have on display isn't bad. Pro number 7 is the chase scenes in this movie when they specifically in the second half of the movie. I am one of those people that subscribe to the saying of the second half of the movie is the better half. Not to say the first half is bad. It's a really good setup, which has a really good payoff. But the second half of the movie, I just think is more entertaining. But yeah, all the chase scenes when they're hooking the shark up with these flotation barrels. They start with one, then they go with two, which for those who don't know, these flotation barrels, they're used to harpoon to either sharks or maybe whales to keep them from diving, because if you have a pocket of air that you try to pull underwater, it's very, very difficult. And so they harpoon those to big animals underwater to keep them from diving, so they can catch up to them, because it's very strenuous to try to pull that underwater. So eventually that just tires them out so that fishermen can come in and finish them off. They start with one, pulls it underwater and stays submerged for a long time. Then they start with two, pulls them underwater and stays submerged for a while. Then finally a third, it still goes back underwater and stays submerged for quite a while. Though I think at this point was when the shark was starting to get tired out, because this is seemingly a superhuman shark, or a super shark, I should say, because it still manages to stay submerged for quite a while at this point with 3 flotation barrels attached to it, which you also got to think that's got to hurt, because it's literally like pulling on a serrated harpoon in the shark's flesh. So you think that's got to hurt. And with how much it stays submerged underwater with 3 of these barrels attached to it, you just got to be like, damn, how have these not ripped out by now? And how is this shark still alive? So yeah, all the chase scenes are really fun. They're very entertaining. All the action scenes are very fun to watch too. They're well shot. They're well edited. The music certainly helps too. It's very whimsical and fantastical. And overall, all the chase scenes, it's just very, very fun to watch and very entertaining. Oh, my ass hurts. Pro number 8 is Bruce the Shark itself. Or it was called Bruce on set, which I'm sure that was a reference to this movie in Finding Nemo with Bruce the Shark. I think this is a very underrated monster in horror movie history. Because, yeah, it's just a shark. But Steven Spielberg managed to give this shark quite a bit of personality without even seeing the damn thing. You can see that this shark obviously is it's kind of like a graboid. It's kind of intelligent. It has kind of a sadistic personality because it likes to mess with its victims. It likes to mess with the three of the orca. Like it shows up from time to time just to kind of taunt them. It smacks into the ship and like disables it, and the shark just keeps fucking with them for a while. It'll like swim past them, say, "Hey, here I am. Come get me. Come get me." Yeah, you just get the sense that, and also towards the end of the movie, I agree with something that Josh from Movie Timeline said. Um, I think towards the end of the movie, the shark is starting to get a little bit more crazy because it's wounded and tired and exhausted. It's starting to become a lot more aggressive and crazy because they say animals, when they're on death's door, that's when they're the most aggressive. And I think towards the end of the movie, it shows because the shark is becoming more aggressive and nasty. But it still has that sadistic personality and it has that sadistic feel to it. So I like the sense of personality that Steven Spielberg gave Bruce the Shark. It's not just a mindless monster. It has sentience to it and it likes to toy with its prey. So yeah, Bruce the Shark is awesome. And finally, pro number 9 is the final kill of the shark is awesome. Not only does it have a really, really iconic final one-liner, "Smile, you son of a bitch," but when that thing explodes, all you see is this giant geyser of bloody water and blood and guts and bits of shark all over the place. And it's so satisfying because you feel like you were on this big journey to kill this damn shark. And when it finally happens, you're just like, yes, finally. So you share Brody's satisfaction in killing the fucker. Now, granted, we all know that Mythbusters came along and twice debunked, would that tank actually explode? The answer is no. Not in the way that you might think. It wouldn't just be like a straight up bomb, but if one was to actually shoot the bottom of a tank, the tank would be more like a giant rocket that would smash into the back of the shark's throat, which either he might inadvertently swallow it or it would just blow out the back of its head if it was strong enough. But either way, it wouldn't explode in the traditional sense. But for theatrical display, it certainly is very effective and fun to watch. Fuck, my nose itches. So, with all the good things to say about the original Jaws, are there any cons? No, but I have some nitpicks. Number one is I think this movie has a slightly low body count. None of the Jaws movies have gigantic body counts, unlike, which is something I think a lot of other shark movies improve upon and having big body counts. But none of these movies have huge body counts. But there's only 5 kills in the original Jaws, which is by no, well, no, I think it's low. It's not like Jaws: The Revenge, which has only 2 kills in the entire movie, which is disappointing. But yeah, I just think there's a little bit too low of a body count. I feel like there should have been at least 7 kills instead of 5, just to showcase that, yeah, this shark has staked claim on this island and is just going to keep feeding and feeding until it's either dead or its food supply is cut off. I just feel like it's a little too low for my tastes, but it's not a huge deal. It's just more like a taste or preference thing. No pun intended. Um, Nitpick number 2 is Mrs. Kintner. I kind of feel like she's just a bitch. It's for the same reason why I don't like it when Donald Pleasance gets the blame in Halloween movies. They're like saying, "Oh, yeah, well, Michael Myers is your monster. Why did you let him out? It wasn't my decision. I'd have kept him locked up if it was up to me. And also, how is it my fault that he goes around and kills people? Same reason. Like, why is it Chief Brody's fault that Alex Kintner got eaten? She should have been going after the mayor because he was the one that said, no, the beaches are not going to be closed. My point is, I really don't agree with Mrs. Kintner being pissed off at Brody for the death of her son. I feel like she's blaming the wrong person. Also, she assaulted a police officer, so there's that. I just feel like it's unwarranted and stupid. Nitpick number 3 is, while there was quite a bit of the book that was garbage that was cut out for the sake of the film, the one thing I think was a shame that they cut out of the movie they cut out of the movie from the book. In the book, the reason why Sheriff Vaughn, or not Sheriff, that's Walking Tall, why Mayor Vaughn is so hell-bent on keeping the beaches open for the summer is he has ties to the mob. Like, he owes money to the mob, and that's why he really can't keep the beaches closed, because otherwise he has no money to pay off his debts to the mafia. Now, the reason why I think it's a shame is because having that in mind, that does explain Mayor Vaughn's actions, and that you still get that feeling that that is why. Like, he's being a really shady politician. Like, dude, you have all of this evidence that is so blatantly like almost shooting you in the face, and yet you're still saying, nah, it's not happening. Like, why are you so dismissive? Now, it also does show, like, Steven showcases that it's maybe not that. It's just like he's a greedy asshole. Which, if you want to look at it that way, it works too. But not, you can take that, but also the fact that he has ties to the mafia in mind, and that also explains his actions. So it works. It works on either way. It works that he's a greedy asshole. It works that he's a desperate politician that's trying to save his ass and pay off his debts to the mafia. And it's also could be both. I just, knowing that, I think it's a shame that that's one thing that they cut out of the book that I don't really agree with. Cutting out the affair and cutting out the ending, which is very different, because in the book they go home every single day after not encountering the shark. In the movie, they stay out there until they kill the shark. But at the end of every day, they sail back to the harbor. That's it. And also in the book, the shark just dies. Like, it's swimming towards Brody, about to kill him. Then it just dies and sinks. Lame. So definitely good on Steven Spielberg for literally giving us an explosive ending. But the mayor having ties to the mafia, I think, is the one element of the book that I disagree with them cutting out. I just feel like it would have given a bit more depth and some more layers to the mayor's character. It still would have made him unlikable, but would have made him be a little more sympathetic. And then it would have also made, when he finally decides to pull his head out of his ass after the sheriff's son is attacked, that's when he's like, okay, no, at this point, I need to take action. This shark's a problem. It just would have made that feel even stronger. And the last nitpick that I have is some of the effects. Mostly it has to do with the mechanical shark. How whenever you see the full shark on screen and you see it swimming by, it doesn't move. It maybe like moves its head a little bit, but for the most part, it's just stiff as a board when it swims by. And I know that sharks move when they swim, and seeing a big giant shark not move when it's going through the water is kind of distracting, and it takes me out of the movie a bit because I know how anatomically incorrect this shark is. It just takes me out of the movie a little bit. And I know that they really couldn't help that because this damn thing kept breaking down so many times on set. So they were just trying to make do with what they had. And I respect them for that. And I acknowledge that what was going on. But still, I can't just help but feel a little bit. Again, it's not a huge problem. This is just a nitpick. But I just can't help but feel that, yeah, I can definitely tell this mechanical shark was just not cooperative on set. It just takes me out of the movie just a little bit. Oh, and there's also a scene. Thanks, Josh, for fucking pointing this out to me. When Bruce the shark leaps up onto the back of the orca, you can see the wires that were hauling it up onto the boat. It's a quick shot, but you can still see them. So thanks, Josh, for pointing that out. You ruined it for us. That's all I have to say about Jaws. Final thoughts. This is a phenomenal movie. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It's one of my favorite Steven Spielberg movies. It's one of the greatest killer animal movies of all time. I just say it's one of the greatest films in general of all time. It's very fun, very entertaining, an excellent summer movie as I'm watching it in the summer. Overall, this is just a phenomenal film. And of course, what else would I be giving it? I will be giving this movie a perfect solid 10 out of 10. Though I still have this question that I want to ask. Is this the greatest killer shark movie of all time? In my opinion, no. I still stand by that. No, this is not the greatest killer shark movie of all time. Similar to how Trev feels with Terminator 2, I feel like it's just kind of frustrating whenever somebody is asked, what do you think is the greatest killer shark movie? The answer instantly out of their mouth is Jaws. What's the greatest killer shark movie? Jaws. What's the best Steven Spielberg movie? Jaws. What's the greatest 70s blockbuster movie? Jaws. Or Star Wars, but Jaws. Now, not to say that Jaws doesn't deserve any of the fame and recognition and popularity that it has, but at the same time, it just is a little frustrating that it just feels like Jaws is such a massive shoe to fill that no other killer shark movie even comes close to filling its shoes. There are a lot of shitty shark movies out there, sure, but I also think there are some other killer shark movies that are either as good or better than Jaws. One that I think is as good is the original Deep Blue Sea. That is a phenomenal film, in my opinion. And one that I think is better is The Meg from 2018. I still stand by that. I think that's the greatest killer shark movie of all time. No bullshit. But yeah, Jaws is a phenomenal movie. Go out and watch it, and post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. Happy 4th of July to all of you guys. Go out and, have a party, have a barbecue. Be safe because of the high heat warning. If you're allowed to, light up some fireworks. Be safe, enjoy your independence, and have a fun 4th of July. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video.